Bayanda. Zobe Sanje Rimba Dan Shasun Dem. Devare Sheban Jiden Kemba Jivon Debe Kamloju. Lana Meban Hana Menanje Demba Sanje Shumden. Bejawa Shajan Toba La Chazen Lo Chedo Jensu. Demba Shumden Dishin Shaban Jajumba Yanda Wan Zobe San. Rimba Dan Shasun Demba Devare Sheban Jiden Kemba Jivon Debe. Kamloju Lana Meban Hana Menanje Sanje Jumden Bejawa Shajan Toba La Chazen. 去的叫做结婚的嘛，中间的信息方查询嘛样的，左边上节里巴当小村的嘛，那位小方几点讲，结婚的要看了就那没办法，他没那结的，上节中间的北京话下家头，查询了去的叫做这，看在赶紧做这东西，实现的那个嘛的，俺年几天的那做叫做在这个吧就。 남다 공화조도 소상과 이시자도 세계로 타반제된 손달라면 공부 순위 정화 자자 천전된 마치면 다베시 센돈 자와 정화 자자 뉴레전라 세바소 마제 냠에 전전 정화 자자 공부 두제 제된 바텀제 전면도 뭐 손놈은 연대 디신자라 자자로 답변되자 정원 개변 제대로 된 놈은 조교와 신주를 전하자. 전에 들면 라바달라 rab도 내 신경 담아 연대된 견뎌 마냐 자자. 네가 제야 메시지 개와 본선소 랑게 셈내 요소. 테네 산제 때마니 kar마를 마면다. 교마서 주로 멜론로다 전다고 되지 저는 대다르다 손놈은 되게 탐지세. 고반담내 gengen자들 가다 나다 시발랍 to
the teacher, the blessed one, the one only, fully destroyed, the completely perfected, fully awakened, perfect knowledge, good conduct, so that no of the world, supreme guidance to them, teacher of gods and humans, to the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious Emperor, the supreme one, the Sacred Lamb. I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one who beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened, perfect knowledge and good conduct, so that no other supreme guidance we stay. Teacher of gods and humans, to you completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious Conqueror, to you from the Sacred Lamb. I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one who beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened, perfect knowledge and good conduct, so that no other supreme guide of beings to gain. Teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious Conqueror, the subdued from the Sacred Lamb. I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When supreme among humans, your blindness serve, you place outside and strive thyself. I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise stand, I prostrate. With the pure body's form, supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds. We know the best, to you I prostrate. With the supreme science, space like the boundless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wiser than to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Teacher having all understanding, the field of merit that widens like a vast ocean, to you the uncontested I prostrate. The beauty which makes one free from attachments, the virtues which raise one from lower realms, the one path such sublime pure reality, to that dharma which pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community daily virtues I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, but perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star mirage, flame of God. an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditions things as such. Through these merits, made sentient beings attain record world seen, subdue the fourth force, and they delivered from motion of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death.
Sanje Jono Zoje Shono Chanju Bando Nande Jazu Nage Jesu Jesu Rola Benja Sanje Juba Juba Sanje Shono Soje Shono Chanju Bando Nande Jazu Nage Jesu Jesu Sono Rola Benja Sanje Juba Juba Sanje Shono Soje Shono Chanju Bando Nande Jazu Nage Jesu Jesu Sono Rola Benja Sanje Juba Shono.
I go for refuge and enlightenment to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Tamje Jimbala Chawa Zenlon Deda Sanje Jumden and the Shenshi Montajo Mayana. Zobe Sanje Ribana Shazun Demban, Devare Shevan Jide Jimba Jibu, Lana Meba Hada Men Anje Demba Sanje Jumden de Son, the Shenshi Montan, Sonum David. Gevezawa Namanchu Mizava Severa Dujim, Sonam Jeteran, Beja Sanam Jeter, Senam Jemado Jemba Juremba, Metona Midemba, Tebe Meva, Sheriff Sijim, Vatona Mazewa, Simjatam Jetemba, Chanju Samba, Pabe Kazana Jeju, Yang and the Tranjil, Ishepa, Bova Sanjim, Sonamrata, Yanim, Gujeta, Chomiche, Kutsumba, Mevan, the Bata. So that when you want to so many about the number to Pumbo number. Come not the medium by Jason number the one nation that you don't know and number two. Sivale, to what you want to give a Yishin on the Deva the Majum, but not other Jim. Sanjay Jim then the Yishan and nearby, young and the one young when you get them. Simjatam Jella Sibe Sala Shuba there and the Damasan Jim then the Yukushi the young one. Abijana Doma Geva, Bada Geva, Tama Geva, Teas and Butsirism, Monday Boy, Yozo Chamaya, Dava, Nembe, but Tushavan, Tushavan, Yavato, but Deton, not Tenio, Kevan of the Sozo and Gajibaji, Jim Lendy, and the Basu, one on the bottom. Yavajo Manzobe, Sanjuda, Drovacheva, Medemba, Medemba, Temba, Yuva, Tobachi, we did. Lebrashuba, Ribrashuba, Chambrushuba, Timbrashuba, Temojave, Charge. Sonam Jibeji, Shin, Yun, Son John, Chimbo, Jimeno, Kundo, and Jibene, Chimbo. Hangia to Zenya on the Dawa, Tajuba, Tambation, the Kodam Tela, Charles, Kangajana, Juba, the Sudan, Danger Jones, Tuatela, Charles. Yeah. So we're going to read the Reason 60, the commentary by Acharya Chandrakirti. The Reason 60 in Sanskrit, Yuktisastika. Satika is the so in the commentary, salutation to the first Mañjushrī, reference to the wisdom hero Mañjushrī. Bowing to the author of the Reason 60, which dispels the two extremes following the victorious path of the reasoning, I will elucidate it with the center way. Yeah, I think we are used to use the term middle way. Yeah, the center and the middle ways. I think there's a difference. Middle is better. Center means there's something in the center, objective. So the bowing to the author of the Reason 60s means Chandrakirti is bowing to the Nagarjuna, who is the author of the Reason 60. And then the benefit of, understanding the dependent originations, it dispels the true extreme. So true extreme is, eternalisms and nihilisms, exaggerations and annihilations. So dispel the true extreme view, exaggerations and annihilations. The reason that follows the Nagarjunas in the center way, in the middle way. So in this manner, the Master Nagarjunas gained distinctive joy by seeing the reality of the relativities exactly as it is. So Chandrakirti is pressing to Nagarjuna, saying that he has gained the wisdom, wisdom of joy. So wisdom of joy which realizes the relativities exactly as it is, not just a word. Knowing that realization to be the source of the supreme faith. Now this is very, very important, So dependent originations, understanding of the dependent originations in the middle way sees the possibility of enlightenment and nirvanas, liberation and enlightenment. So the faith to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is, true understanding, not the blind faith, not just assuming. And when you understand the dependent originations, you will see the possibility of the cessation of afflictive emotions, of the delusions. You also see the possibility of ending the birth in second existence. So when you see that and you have pure and genuine faith in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, particularly, particularly explicitly the faith in Dharma. So you have faith in Dharma through knowing the possibility of end of afflictive emotions or the delusions. So you have, not just believing, you understand there is the possible of ending your life in second existence, the birth in second existence. So that is only possible through understanding the dependent originations. So that's the knowing the realization to be the source of the supreme faith. And also that the whole store of the mundanes and the transcendent virtues. So not dependent originations, realization of the dependent origination, not only it gives the strength in your faith, it is also the source of the noble beings, right? And noble individuals whole store with the mundane and transcendental virtues. Mundane means ordinary, small virtues like prostration, recitation, meditations, pilgrimage. So all this can be, strengthened, perfected through the wisdom understanding of dependent originations. And then transcendent the virtues, jigdena devas, like noble qualities, Arya qualities, noble qualities. All noble individuals without exceptions, and even the perfect enlightenment about all aspects of the reality, which is the unobscured intuitions of the virtues Buddhas, all arises from seeing the relativities, which means, through dependent originations, with realization of dependent origination, doing one recitation of mantra, doing prostrations. So it all becomes the real cause for the liberations, because if you don't have the realization, the emptiness of the dependent originations, and practice with generosity, the prostrations only, for the temporary, the benefit there. So with wisdom, and everything become the cause, the real cause for the liberations. And then all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, their whole qualities is all, emerge from that wisdom that understands the dependent originations. So I say that's why all arises from seeing the relativities. He was moved to explain that relativities. So now Chandrakirti is saying that when Nagarjuna write this Reason 60, Reason 60, he was totally moved by this understanding of dependent originations. Then he really want it benefits to him, and he really want other people to understand this. He proclaims its immunity from the taint of the extremist notion of the creations and the destructions, arising and destructions. He also claimed that immunities, and it is the perfect antidote for too extreme view. I think this translators, he must be good in English, but he haven't, yeah. So sometimes too much liberty in terminology is not really good, it's confusing. Why he has to say the immunities. So he proclaimed its immunity from the taint of extremist notion of the creation. Creation here is the arising, destructions, disintegrations, arising and the disintegrations. So,
what is stanza?
Huh?
You are reading the stanza?
No. Yeah, I'm reading the commentaries by,
Okay.
So
to find the stanza, you are reading the commentary.
Yeah, commentary. So the commentary is composed by the Chandrakirti.
Okay.
So I think the arising and destructions or disintegrations, we say the human beings or sentient beings, their whole emotionals are, due to the objectively grasping on the 8 attributes: arising, disintegrations, and arising and disintegrations, and annihilations, and permanent, and coming and going, and the I think meaning, that different meaning, or the essentially the synonymous meaning. So generally the human beings and sentient beings, their emotions are very much you know, kind of, you know, generated or built on the grasping on these 8 attributes. So, and one of that is the arising and the disintegrations, means to be born or die. You know, so this is the one of our human most, moving emotional, you know, for the human being. So if this is the arising, the concept of arising, you know, concept of having born, concept of disintegrating, impermanence, you know, this is human emotions mostly touch on these 2 concepts. So, which means now, if this 2 concept idea, the arising and disintegrations, is the one that always concern for the human emotional, then we should understand the meaning of arising and the disintegrations. So if you don't understand the exact, you know, the meaning of arising and the disintegrations, or having born and impermanence, then what we do is, through emotional, we grasping on the arising or having born is something intrinsic, and dying is intrinsic. So die means disappears, dissipate, discontinue, no more. And having born is solid and concrete, you know. So more you kind of, you know, with this kind of view, more you think about born and die, it really kind of, you know, maybe say it's disappointing, dissatisfactions, worries, because of these 2 concepts, you know, the birth and die. So this is why the Chandrakirti say, he also proclaims the immunities or the antidote. So it kind of, you know, antidote from the extremist notion of arising and disintegrations. So, which means we are exaggerating the meaning of the birth. We are also exaggerating, or, you know, meaning of die or the death. You know, so the death means to us, you know, why death is so concerning to us, because we tend to think that the death is something end of life, end of existing, you know. So, and then the having born is something, you know, intrinsic or solid. You know? So if you understand that is a relativities, the independent, there's no dying, there's no having born. You know, intrinsically there's no birth, no dying, but relatively, yes, there is a rising and the disintegrations. So the 2 extreme notion of the, you know, arising and the disintegrations, and existing. I think here in this translator says, being and nothingness, existing and non-existence. So existing or not existing, you know, God exists or not exist. There is also something, you know, is matter to our emotion. You know, law of karma, it exists or not exist. You know, and the time exists or not exist. You know, so
here saying the Chandrakirti, in Nagarjuna's, the existing is also relativities. Non-existing is relativities. Anything that exists yesterday is relatively, yesterday is, is non-existing with today, but with relative to today, yesterday was the past, but past means it is still a time. The yesterday is not exist today, but still it exists in your memory. It exists, it's not totally deleted. And why? Because the today is the sign of existing of yesterday, right? So the present is the sign, present is the reason. There was yesterday, there was the past. So the past, with relation to the present is not exist, but, because of the present, the past, yesterday is just in the past. Yesterday is just a time that conceived as a past. So anyway, existing, non-existing is, So tomorrow is not exist today, just because of the today, tomorrow is existing. Tomorrow exists as a coming, right? So the meaning of the existing is relatively, and non-existing is also relatively, because it's not being intrinsically produced. The magnificence of the relativities being its freedom from any intrinsic reality. So the magnificence of the relativities, the realization of dependent originations, is the freedom from the intrinsic reality. Do you see a difference? What is it? Do you see a difference?
Difference in
I mean, the same book, right?
Yeah.
So there is a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find where you wrote this time. Oh, okay. It's in English.
Yes.
So that is the book of Chandrakirti, maybe
Yes.
a commentary of Nagarjuna 6.
Amazon or wisdom.
Now I understand.
Yeah, so the feeling devotion for that transcend Lord who taught relativity himself, having become indistinguishable from its actuality, Nagarjuna composed this homage to him. So Nagarjuna, and how Nagarjuna says in the 60th stanza, so the first stanza is, I bow to the Lord sage. I think here he all translates Lord sages. Sages, usually we translate Tibetan, Tangsong, sages. when you read these actual stanzas, we call the able one. You know, I bow to the able one. You know, the able, the Buddha. So Buddha will awaken one, the able one. You know, Tuba. We call Tuba. You know. So the able one, who proclaimed the relativities, the way by which he abandoned, you know, arising and the disintegrations. So I think this, yeah. So what is the meaning? I bow to the able one who proclaimed. So the Buddha claimed that all the abandonment of, you know, defilement, afflictive emotions, obscurations, all can be abandoned or eliminated through, you know, this dependent originations or realization of the relativities.
So relativity and dependent origination are synonymous.
Synonymous, yeah. Relativity is, here I think relativity means dependent originations. Dependent origination means relativity. So then, how he abandoned all the negative emotions, negative karmas, all the obscurations, what Buddha claimed this can be ended or this can be abandoned, and says, so by abandoning or, you know, negating the intrinsic notion of arising and the disintegrations, you know, I think arising and the disintegration, as I mentioned, it can be understood having born or going to be born, and died or going to die. So these two meaning, you know, if you understand, you know, as it is, saying there is no such having born or having been born, you know, intrinsically means there is no such one thing, you know, that born from, you know, its cause. You know, so for example, say the barley sprout, you know, conventionally barley sprout born from barley seed. So now, does that mean there's any sprout? There is any sprout, which is the sprout, and it is having born from the barley seed? It is impossible. You know, so we can linguistically we can say barley sprout is born from the barley seed. So now the question is there any barley sprout which is the barley sprout and it has ever born from the barley seed? If there is something, so the arisen sprout has to born once again from the barley seed, right? So if barley seed means it is already being produced, barley sprout is produced, you know, there is no tomato which is going to born from the tomato seed. There is no tomato that which is, you know, tomato that you can pinpoint this has ever born from the tomato seeds. Huh?
I don't understand.
Yeah. So we say tomato is from the tomato seed, barley sprout is from the barley seed, yogurt is from the milk, right? So yogurt is from the milk means, if you hold this is the yogurt. Now, do you see this coming from the milk? No. And why do you say it's yogurt is from milk? There's no possible that you can witness this very yogurt has ever, going to be or having born from the milk. So anything that you hold is tomato. That is no possible for you to see is coming from the seed. But in the language, yes, this is how we say this tomato is from the tomato seed. This tomato is from the tomato seed means, and it is what it meant to you. You don't see the difference. That means, yes, this is the tomato. I am holding it. Now, this also coming from the tomato seed. So the coming from tomato seed means, is it physically? If tomato is the physical, and the physical things that are coming from the one another physical tomato seed, which means tomato that you are holding is going to, or it is that you have seen with your eye is coming from the seed. Right? So it is possible that you can see it? No, right? Then why do you say it? It is not possible, and why do you say it's coming from the seed? Are you forced to say it? Or it is your culture to say it? So anything, a reasons has not going to arise or have arising from the tomato seed. But, now this is in the relativity, you can understand this tomato seed is without preceding this tomato, without preceding the tomato seed. It is not possible. That is, relativity is the basis for the language. So yes, tomato is coming from the tomato seed. So if you go a little bit, if you say this tomato is physically there, is coming from the seed, it is in the extreme. It's exaggerations. That is extreme. Now, what is not extreme is this tomato that I'm holding is without preceding the tomato seed, it is not possible. So that is the basis for a language to speak. Tomato is coming from the tomato seed. So, which means now, anything that physically produced, physically there, anything that arisen is not going to arise from their cause. And non-physical, the future of the tomato, also not arising from the tomato seed. So the future is not coming from the seed. Present is not coming from the seed. Right? But, you are, so you are allowed to say the tomato is from the seed because without seed being preceded, this is not possible. So that is, relativities. Understanding of tomato arises from the tomato seed is relatively understood. Right. So, in this way, one of our emotions always that impact on our mind, or that always this pops up in your mind, so that you think that I am born from my mothers. So I am, some people religiously thinking, I am from previous life. So I'm coming from the previous life. If you don't see the tomato, the physical, is coming from the seed. So how it is possible this person in the present is coming from the previous life? Right? If you say, you are Tibetan, but I'm coming from previous life, the previous life I'm not sure is Tibetan or not. Maybe the elephant or something, right? So now this Tibetan is coming from the elephant, you know. So it's kind of like, if you, as the language has speak, and if you follow, you know, exactly, and you are exaggerating, you know. So, and yeah, so that's kind of, you know, so I think maybe our emotional, sometimes when we think about I'm coming from a previous life, imagining this present life and this coming from the previous life, we also imagine that. And when we think, oh, I'm going to next life, you're imagining present life, which is going to next life. So the both are not possible. It is impossible. Right? So now what really kind of, you know, concerns for the mind, you know, is when you think about, you know, oh, I'm going to die, I'm going to born somewhere, I'm not sure. You know, that mind is, you know, some kind of, the degree of that emotions is impacting, influencing, and making you worry, you know. And one thing is, you are worrying this present life person is going to in the future. So no present has ever, you know, gone to the futures. No present ever coming from the past. No past ever come to the present. So it will kind of reduce the intensity of the degree of that, the worry. So if this help, and if you understand that coming from the previous life, going to the next life, there is no any physical things. There's no physical things. There's no physical going, coming from the past. There's no physical going to the next life in the future. So, but in conventionally, the relatively, you know, you says this is the present, you know, present life. It is the result of the continuity of the past. This is the continuity of the past. This is also the continuum of the future. So the continuum means if this physical is not going, and what is the continuum? Continuum means this has to, in order the future happen, you know, this has to disintegrate. This disintegrate, and you know something follows. You know, the next life, which follows your actions, your karma, your emotions, all the habit imprints in others' next continuities. That's called next life. Right.
And the imprints would be potentialities.
Yeah, the potentialities. You know, what you think, what you know, what you desire for, you know, how aggressive you are, how calm you are. There's all impact, imprints on next continuity. You know. So if you understand this relatively, and the relatively, yes, there is next life. Relatively, yes, there is the past life. Relatively, this is the present remaining. And there is no present ever remain in any event, any second, but relatively it is remaining. Right? So it's kind of, so if you understand the relatively, there is no intrinsic, there is no anything happening, substantially. So this may help our emotional to calm, our worry, worrying about future is maybe it will reduce that, because the way we think, the way we imagine the going to next life, it is, it's a kind of, there are some exaggerations. So Nagarjuna says, I have, very kind of, I generate the pure, genuine faith in the able one, the Buddha, because he taught this dependent originations, dependent originations of the arising and the disintegrations. Buddha says arising and the disintegrations only in the relatively, only possible in the relativities. Beyond the relativities, there is no, there's no one coming from the past, there's no one going to the next life. Beyond the relativity. So the Nagarjunas, I bow to the able one who claimed the relativity is the way which he abandoned, the intrinsic arising and the intrinsic destructions. I think Tibet kangi keda jibata sudi in the panyu. Kangi keda jibata sudi in the panyu. Kewa the jibba means here true extreme view of arising and the disintegrations has abandoned, sudi in which the relativities understandings, understanding relativities through that relativities, he abandoned two extreme of arising and the disintegrations. So therefore he was moved, he was fascinated by this wisdom, then I bow to the able one. Yeah. Why did the master compose an homage? I think here the translator says, expressly for this centuries teaching. Now the question is, why did the master Nagarjuna, 70 stanzas and the dispeller of the dispute, two texts, and from the beginning of that text, there is no homage to the Buddha, not in 70 stanzas, not in the dispeller of the dispute. And why this particular reason 60s, why he, made the salutation to the Buddha. So, why did the master compose an homage? I think it's like explicitly for this middle teachings, middle way teaching, this reason 60. When he expressed no such praise in the voidness 70 stanzas, and all the rebuttal of the objections. So that is also the same, the one of the textbook. So sometimes we read like dispeller of the dispute. Now here's a rebuttal of the objections. So 70 stanza, there is no praising to the Buddha. Just from the beginning, it's whole reason. There's no end, there is a praising to the Buddha. From the beginning, there is no praise to the Buddha. So many of the texts there with the Nagarjuna has no praise to the Buddha. Now, these 60 stanzas, why he say that? So now the answer is that since the voidness 70, rebuttal of the objections are both elaborations on the fundamental verses of the middle way. So the Nagarjuna-karika, the middle way, the text. So 70 stanzas and the rebuttal of objections is part of that root text. Therefore, he did not, pay homage. He did not state his salutation to the Buddha, because it's a part of that, the middle way thing.
But the fundamental verses of the central way, he has an
This, 60 stanzas is the different from, Nagarjuna-karika. Yeah, so the verses of the middle way, I think it's better to use the middle way, it's not a center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be confusing.
Yeah, I think he's. So they are not independent work. So they are not independent. 70 stanzas and rebuttal of the objections are not independent work. And therefore, he composed no separate dedication or dedicatory, the verses in them. So thus, with regard to the rebuttal of objections from the verses in the fundamental verses of the middle way, there is no intrinsic reality in things. So rebuttal is, rebuttal of objections, that particular book or text is like stanzas number 1. So nature of the effect. So nature of the effect do not exist within the assembly of the cosmic conditions. So therefore, effect do not arise by itself, effect do not arise from others. So that is how the rebuttal of the objections, It is evident that rebuttal of objections is elaborations drawn from that middle way verses, the stanzas number 1, chapter number 1. Since it treats objections, the response to that verses. So this whole text is drawn, argument or analyzed from that stanzas in this middle way, chapter 1. Similarly, the regard the voidness 70 from the verses in the middle way. So this is chapter 7. Like illusions, like dream, like fairy city or city of Zen eaters, such in birth, such is life. Now it's a, saying that examples are the illusions, the dream, and the city of Zen eaters. In this way, the sentient beings born and die. Only in illusion, a dream like birth and dream like death. So 대신 때는 대신 때는 지구송스. I think he's kind of like such is birth, such is life. 대신 때 illusion like you born, and illusion like you live, illusion like you die. So all in the illusional. So he proclaims it is the evident that voidness 70 is likewise in elaborations drawn from that middle-way verses, chapter 7. Since it treats objections in response to that verses, since Nagarjuna composed this reason 60, just like his middle way, primarily as the investigations of the relativities, it is not comparable to those texts that are elaborations of the verses from within the middle way. Now here's the Chandrakirti saying this reason 60 is, just simply generally analyzing on the dependent originations. So therefore, it is a different from Nagarjuna. It's not part of the Nagarjuna. I think he has to say that because the meaning is very much similar. Yeah, sometimes we say, this I heard many times. All the Nagarjunas, when you read, when you study very closely, and in the sutra of the Buddha's teachings, and Nagarjunas, all are focusing on the one thing, the dependent originations, the absence intrinsic. And seems like, they don't have no different subject to discuss, other than dependent origination and the absence intrinsic existence. So in the Buddha Pali, this is, so in the mundanes, all this, in the mundane's knowledge is some kind of the extra nut ties on that, exaggerations. If you, untie one nut, the root nut, and everything will be, untied. So this is Buddha this is, So they're Nagarjunas, they're focusing on the root of that nut that we continues to tie, on the space. There's nothing, but we make that meaning imposing. And then all the mundane educations and knowledge, extra, additional exaggerations on that first exaggerations. So all fall apart if you untie the first nut. So which means, to be enlightened, to know everything, is not much to do. Just understand the dependent originations. Knowing too much is there's too much to know. Everything is exaggerations. So just, if you understand the dependent originations, absence of intrinsic, everything will be known. By knowing one, knowing everything.
So we say in chronological order, first Nagarjuna wrote the ornament of the
Nagarjuna.
Yeah, that was his first work.
Yeah.
And then he wrote the 70 stanzas and the
objections
as a commentary to his own work.
Yeah.
And then the 60.
60. And there's Shimunamta, and refined what's that? Refine. Yeah, there's another text. So in this, chapter 7 in the Nagarjuna, and he kind of, set the example like illusion and the dream and the city of the Sun Eaters. And then he says, this is, exactly the city of the Sun Eaters, exact like illusions. In this way, we born, we live, we die, and we born again. So that's the 70 stanzas. Since Nagarjuna composed the 60 stanzas, just like Medieval Prominence, Investigation of Relativities, not comparable to the other texts that are elaboration verses from within the Nagarjuna middle way. Those who wish to travel to the city of Nirvana by abandoning all the claims of the realist. Now here's the realist and theist. Theist.
Theist.
Theist.
It is theist. It is theos means God.
Theory.
Theist, it is someone that
Believe.
in God.
Belief systems.
In God.
In God. In God. Atheist, it is the person who doesn't believe in any God. Theist, it is the person who believes in some kind of supreme being.
Yeah. So the realist, theist, and other as to the creation and destruction of life through the intrinsic reality, a creator, a nature, a spirit, a time, a God, and so on. Yeah, this is a little bit,
That is why in some, from the point of view of the Western religions, they see Buddhism as atheist.
Yeah.
Because there is not a creator.
Atheist, yeah. Non-believer?
Yeah.
So they reject us from the religion, religious people.
Yeah, because then the person.
But we still say we are religious people.
The moment we hear atheists, in our societies, we think that you don't believe in absolutely nothing after life, that it is like a confusion.
I think for them is this atheist group is for sure they are going to hell.
For sure.
Yeah.
All of them. And forever.
Yeah.
No chance of leaving the hell realm.
The Muslim from the Muslim religions, this is non-Muslims. What do they have name? Kafir. So this Muslim they say kafir. So non-Muslims, these people are 100% they are going to heaven. So non-Muslims, only the Muslims go to heaven. Yeah, this little bit, sometimes the translators we are not sure of the claim of realistic theist and other as to the creation and destruction of life through intrinsic reality. Yeah. So when I read in Tibetan and it says, tell them means so this was, so how this, the conversations, when you say the first stanzas in Tibetans, they say, one who taught this, no intrinsically arising, no intrinsically disintegrations. One who taught that. Then all this conversation begins. One who taught this, which means there are many masters trying to, trying to get the meaning. What is the meaning for life? What is the liberations? And what is the cause, the source of the suffering? How we abandon? And many masters are continuously, trying to understand. And this, referring to the Buddha, you says everything, all the suffering is coming from true extreme view. And abandoning this, and you says, this is how you achieve the permanent state of peace. And the rest, they talk about, the suffering is totally, to eliminating suffering is impossible. The suffering is very much in natural. Suffering is because of the four elements. And some says, this is, you cannot get rid of, that, first it says the suffering is very much with natural. So therefore, the faith is not going to eliminate all the suffering because suffering is rooted in the natural, And then says, and some master says, yes, there's a moksha, liberation is possible, but by yourself, you cannot get rid of suffering. You have to ask the Bhagavan. And if he, in his will, and he can make that possible, but you cannot. Right. So that's why it is the creator. And then in non-Buddhist, there's many systems that believing that some says the Lord Shiva, Lord Shiva, and some says it's the Vishnu, and generally there says the Brahma. So, mainly they're saying the Bhagavans, that the creator, if he wants, he can make the liberation possible to you. So what you can do is you have continuously maintain that faith in Bhagavan. So Nagarjuna is saying, you are different. So Nagarjuna is saying to Buddha, you are different. The many people they say this, that you are different. You says, you can liberate yourself by, generating the wisdom relativities and, overcomes the true extreme views, all the misconceptions, extreme view by abandoning, and you can make yourself attain the liberations. So you are, you are your masters, and you are your enemy. If you continue to go wrong view, choose in the wrong view, naively or stubbornly falling, and then you can cause yourself to be continuously experience suffering. If you are wise enough, intelligent enough, brave enough to, to investigate the reality, you can reveal the relativities, and you can continuously practice this and enhance the wisdom, and that way you can overcome extreme view, and you're free. Because all the suffering is rooted into misconceptions. So now here in translations, this is problem, I bow to the Lord Sage. And Nagarjuna did not say I bow. So
what would be the what?
Nagarjuna says, no, this almost like I bow to one who taught. I bow to one who taught dependent origination, relativities, through that way abandoning the too extreme view.
So I bow to the teachings, to the text.
So I bow to one who taught. Means, now it means he can bow to Shakyamuni that he had received the dependent origination. He also bowed to the previous many Buddhas who continuously talking about these dependent originations. And which also he means he kind of, singling out the Buddha from the rest of the master. So rest of the master, they say, the source of the suffering is natural, and source of the suffering is the Bhagavan, or source of the suffering is, some say it's the permanent time, independent time, sometimes time, and sometimes this is particles, So the realistic means it's the naturals, here in this way.
Naturalist or essentialist?
The claim of realist is Moini means, like for example, some of non-Buddhist school says, if you think that you can attain the liberations of moksha through abandoning anger, attachment, jealousies, all of them, so the anger and attachment is very much, depending on, or it is the condition or the caused by your physical element. Then particularly flame and the jaundice, the potential of the flame and jaundice are the cause of anger and attachment. If you try to get rid of that, so you have to get rid of this two kind of potential disease. If you want to, again, remove that potential disease, and that disease is produced by and heat and the cold. So how can you go continuously, dealing with trying to get rid of heat and cold? If there is no heat and cold, there is no you exist. There is no your life. So this is why I say, total eliminations of the anger attachment is not possible. That's what they believe. Sometimes Bhagavan get angry and get jealous. So even the God, this thing. So it's like its anger and attachment is just natural reactions, element. It's the chemical reactions. Yeah, they are. Yeah, so maybe Buddha has no chemical, maybe. The very compassionate people has less chemical, or their chemical is not trained to react. So yeah, it's very, very, And also some of the this is attachment, particularly lust, is the potential cause of this is the sperm in the body. So this is the cause. If you want to get rid of that, then don't eat, don't don't drink. So now, in the Buddha says anger and attachment. Maybe you can say that there's a certain degree that reactions may, with the chemical, but the anger attachment is, through the misconception. So exaggeration and misconceptions, that triggers the anger and attachment. Misconceptions is feeding the target to the anger and attachment. What is the target? The target, the solid concreteness. If you don't like, there is a solid concreteness that is unlikable, unfavorable. If you like, if you attach, yes, this favorable is concrete and solid existing. That feed it to the emotional, then emotions, react with that. When emotions react, there's a physical expressions. Maybe this is something to do with your chemical. But the emotionals, the mind, which is activated by the misconceptions, not by your chemical. Right? So, so this is the realistic, is some kind of, this is natural. I think here's the theist is, and when you read in Tibetan, it said Onchu. Onchu means is the creator, And others, so, the creations, like the birth and the dying of the life, born, live, dies, are some kind of intrinsic property in there. And that because the source of that is what makes you born, what makes you live, and who has this, the power to allow you to born and live and die, and there is the creator in the Bhagavan, or it says it's the nature, or particles, like you said, chemicals, and the spirit. I think here in talking about Atmas, the self of the person which is independent from the body and mind. So the body and mind, and which is born and live and die, and when whole this body is die, there yourself, yourself, Atma, the kind of, that's in the nature of the permanent, that still remain untouched with dead body. So that kind of thinking, there's many of those misconceptions, spirit and the time. So then say, oh, time will answer, time will punish. So there's some kind of, the time is independent from yourself. Right? So some people think that their time is independent. So, and then time, they here in English translated God. So in Tibetan we say Semejipu, the Vishnu. So the Bhagavans and so on, yet are handicapped by error through misperceiving the two realities, ultimate and conventional. So this is saying that if you don't understand the conventional and ultimate truth, and you may, blame on those, either the Bhagavan, or it is that time, or it is the Vishnu who, or it's the nature of the particles, the elements, or chemicals. So you always think that something is causing me, right, to be born and live and die. So if you don't understand the true truth, and you may, there's no options. Either you find it is saying, oh, it's just element. Or you say, oh, it is the person up in the sky who is deciding. Or you may say, it is the time that fixed, good time of yourself, the bad time of yourself is just fixed somewhere, and then, it will show up, if you're doing, so there's something that's like nothing in my hand. The time that I have, written, or the Bhagavan has, written the time for you. Maybe this year or that, in the youth time or the old time, adult time, you may have good time. Then you will have another time, and something to fix, that kind of thing. So if you understand the true truth, dependent originations, you see, you're always in your hand. What going to do, what is happening with you or going to happen in the futures. So in your actions, your action is the creator. Your mind is the creator. Your mind is the responsible for the good time, the bad time, everything. So, So we're not able to, for a long time, so if you continuously with these misconceptions, even though you have a strong wishes to attain liberations, you want to free from all suffering. So as long as this misconception remains within you, will not be able to very long time to reach the city of Nirvana. How genuine you are, how interested in seeking liberation, how exerted into achieving the moksha. As long as your mind is bound with these misconceptions, there is almost impossible to see the nirvana. So nirvana has no compassion to you. Nirvana don't say, this much time you have spent, now I should come to you. So whose nature is the nirvana, whose nature is the termination of cyclic life, the cessation of, or the end of the birth and second existence in nirvana, right? And since the mere fact of this teaching of the relativity itself serve as the cause of, undistorted insight into the true realities. So that relativities, the teaching of the relativity serve as the cause of undistorted insight into the true truths. So which means, understanding of the true truth, conventional ultimate truth. It is the prime, the peerless journey all noble individuals have traveled so far. They're all in the past. The Buddha, Bodhisattvas, the Arhat, all, attained nirvana, attained enlightenment through just one thing, relativities, understanding of the dependent originations. So the universal path that is dedicated exclusively to the city of nirvana, freeing one completely from all creations, consequently unexcelled teachers who taught it with consummate lordly power of the complete store of intuitions and merit. I think he was using so many, new terminologies. The intuition is the wisdom realizing emptiness, and particularly direct realization emptiness, and the merit as the method side, accumulation of merit and accumulation of the wisdom, and particularly direct realization emptiness. So it is not celebrated by as a lord of sage simply because he is chief among the dispels and hermit Buddha. He discovered and taught the teaching of the relativities. Hence, the Nagarjuna said, I salute that Lord of the sage who proclaimed the relativities. So now they're saying the wisdom, in the Prajaparamita way of saying the wisdom realizing emptiness or the relativity is the mother-like. From there, with this wisdom, there is possible of an arhats, or solitary realizers, Buddha and the Bodhisattvas, all born from one mother's, the wisdom realizing emptiness. So, this is the mother, and then sometimes this is wisdom realizing emptiness as the gateway, the only single gateway to nirvana. Without this, there is no way to enter into nirvana or enlightenment. So it doesn't happen that someone who is not Lord of the Sage, he continues to say the Lord of the Sage.
This is all the able one, Krishna?
Yeah, the able one. So I think this is not all the time the able one. Yeah. Now here's the able one. So if one objects that neither Lord or his teaching is truly established, since they are mutually dependent, we reply as follows. Now this is that, so before Chandrakirti says that wisdom realizing emptiness or the relativities is the mother of all good qualities, all Aryas, the Arhats, the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, all born from one single wisdom, that wisdom realizing emptiness. Therefore, it is very important, And then says, what is the meaning of the dependent originations? Dependent, So now say, if someone thinks that dependent originations is, what is the example of dependent originations? You say East and West, and then say, the existing with East is depending on the West, and existing with the West is depending on the East, So East could not exist by itself without depending on the West. That very West is depending on East. Means now, actually they don't exist at all. People may think that, maybe there's East and West does not really exist, So then this kind of, we reply as follows, that which is mutually dependent is neither creation nor destroyed with any other intrinsic reality. Non-existing is not a non-existing, it is the not existing intrinsically. The West is not exist intrinsically, therefore existing is can be depending on the West. The West is depending on the East because the East is not intrinsically exist. Like when there is the cow and horse, so the existing horse is not depending on the cow. Existing cow is not depending on the horse. Without cow, horse can exist. Without horse, cow can exist. Now, without the West, East cannot exist. Without the tall, short cannot exist. So in either creation that destroys any other intrinsic reality, it is the relativities that is precisely what voidness advocates claim. For one does not become the Lord of the Sage simply by proclaiming the relativities, but rather by, articulating the pattern of the mutually dependent establishment of the things, hence by the negating things intrinsically real, creations and destructions. So that's the problem, if you don't use the able one, So this whole, discussions debate on that one word, the able one. So why you say the, primary, the able one to the Buddha? So then there says that dependent origination is first revealed by himself. He taught this dependent origination, from his own experience. Shakyamuni Buddha, there is no guru or teacher who taught him about the dependent originations. He revealed by himself. So therefore, he is the primary, the able one. And then all the arhats, and the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas, the Nagarjuna, Chandrakirtis, what they are discussing on the dependent originations, because Buddha has already taught them. Without Buddha, all these great masters won't be talking about it in the dependent originations. This is why he is called the able one, the able one. So this is the problem when he do not translate the literally the word. He keeps saying Lord of Sage, Lord of Sage. The good thing he's not saying Jesus. So this whole discussion is why Buddha is called the able one. Creations. So now, maybe I'll read once again that the stanzas number 1. So in Tibetan, kangi kyedan jibata, sudin the onyubas. So one who taught, this idea, abandoning all the, negative consequences through realizations of the dependent originations, particularly, negating, intrinsic arising, intrinsic disintegrations. Therefore, I'm going to call you the able one. This is Nagarjuna says. I'm going to call you the able one. I bow to you because you are the one who taught this, dependent originations. Through that way, you can, eliminate all the negative consequences. So then, when you say one who taught this, and then how about other people, other masters? And the other master says the cause of the suffering, the root of the suffering is, some says it is because of the time that fixed for you, or is it deciding by the Bhagavan, the creator, or some says it's just the chemical or particles, the elements. So you say, everything can be, you can set free from all the suffering through this relativities. You are the only one who taught this. The many masters in the past and the future and the present, they're all trying to find what is the root cause of the suffering. And some say it's just the Bhagavan, the creator. Some say it's the time. Some say it's the elements. And some says it's just money. If you know money, you're suffering. Some say you have no insurance, you suffer. So the many people says, right? So if no insurance is the suffering, and then people don't have the insurance, they cannot be happy. I think we see there are many people who have no insurance, much happier than the people who has the insurance. So this is like, and what is the cause of suffering? They're all masters discussing and trying to understand that, And then Nagarjuna said, you taught this, the relativities. You taught this dependent originations. So I can see through the dependent originations the possibility of end, cessation of negative emotions. So I practice, I actualize, now I can see it's possible. So this is the only one. So therefore the able one is you. And then he says, I'm not going to say the Buddha is able one just because he's the first person who had discovered it. I'm saying he has revealed by himself, he started the teachings. Without him, no one can, discuss, and no one can understand the dependent originations. Therefore, I'm going to call the Shakyamuni as the able one. So if you don't really use the able one, and then whole discussions is, it sounds like it's gossiping, Why you say this, It is the time, the God, the creator, spirit. Why do you say that, right? So I think that's the main thing. So I bow to the able one who taught, one who proclaimed the relativities, the way by which he abandoned, intrinsic arising, and intrinsic destructions. So I think, yeah. So now, for the summary, that's now saying that there is no substantial or the intrinsic, the birth. You have not born intrinsically. You will not live, life that you're living is not intrinsic. And your death is not intrinsic. It's not substantial. And then how do you, I experience, I'm living, I'm going to experience, I'm dying, What is that? And then it says, this is like illusions in a dream, that you are born and you live and you die. So the dreamlike means there is no solid, there is no solid thing or concrete thing has born and live and die. It is just conceptual. It's image and characteristic, mental projections. So with this, how's that? Abstract of the, within the abstract, you are living, you born, you die. Yeah, I think maybe it's not really. The first I said that, how do you think the tomato that you just hold one tomato that you say is born from the seed? You will say it, but if you ask yourself, have ever, anyone who has experienced this tomato is coming from seed? You don't see it, right? So, and what is the meaning that you are saying this is from the seed? So you have to understand, the language is constructed, the meaning, based on, without preceding the particular seed, the type of seed, this is not going to happen. Therefore, I'm just simply saying, and then it's born from the seed. So in that way, do you really say, I born from today me, born from, yesterday me, right? So one who sits in that in the teaching throne, when he get up, that one who is getting up from this throne is born from the one who is sitting on the throne. Because without that preceding sitting, there is no getting up from seat. So, in that way, if this is how you think, without preceding the particular type of seed, there's no sprout of that type. Without preceding yesterday, the Friday, no Saturday. So you say Saturday is born from Friday? You don't say it? September born from August? There's a continuity. There's a continuity. So, in that case, are you always pregnant? Next person is going to born from you. So everything is pregnant now. Then every woman is pregnant, ready to give birth for the next event. So I think that's the kind of ideas, the arising, the born, the birth. So there is no intrinsic. Something disintegrates and something happened. And then there is the continuing. In that continuing, and you mentally construct, this is the present. So this is how it ends. And this end of this present is not the end of existing. if you die, it is not the end. So as a, it's not E-N-D, but it's rather A-N-D. And what? And continue. And something happened. You die and something happened, again. So that's, destructions or death is not annihilations. The birth is not substantial. The birth is not substantial, and death is not the end, not the dissipations, not the discontinuing. It is the continuing. Death is the continuing. So you can say, at 9 o'clock in the morning, who is having breakfast is, from now, it is dead. It ceased to exist. But that does not mean I am end. So, when you're 12 years old, and that is end, that died, that does not mean I have ended. I'm still continuing. And the whole physical disappears in the space, still continuing. Right? That if there are any insurance that can apply in next life, so we should take that insurance. Yeah, any questions? You have a question? Chanju jo Rinpoche, Maje Bana, Jejuji, Jeva Nyamba, Mewanya, Kondo, Peverish. Tonya Tawa Rinpoche, Maje Bana, Jejuji, Jeva Nyamba, Mewanya, Kondo, Peverish. Pama Simjan Tamje, Dedan Denjuji, and Rotamje, Tado Tonga, Chanju Semba Kana, Sushu, Tadagunja, Monum Jojuji, Karira Voko, Vishimazo, Panda de Woma, Lunjuve, Jeresam, Tinzin Jadu, Shabba, Sidebado, Denjuji.
May the precious Buddha divine, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born not decline, but increase forevermore. May the precious mind realize in emptiness, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born not decline, but increase forevermore. Due to these merits, may your father and mother sentence have all the happiness. And may your ever reigns and live forever. Wherever there are bodhisattvas, may your prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred lands surrounding these small mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. O powerful Celestic Desmiliazo, remain in this world until samsara ends.
Thank you.